Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Med School Minutes podcast, where we discuss what it takes to attend and successfully complete a medical program. This show is brought to you by St. James School of Medicine. Here is your host, Kaushik Gua.
Welcome to another episode of Med School Minutes, where we talk about everything MD with a focus on international students, specifically Caribbean students. Today we are going to talk to Dr. Bhadriraju, who is a Clerkship Director for St. James School of Medicine, as well as the CMO of Prime Health. We also have two special guests, Dr. Saad Hanan and Dr. Kiran Nizamani, who are our student counselors and have been associated with St. James in different capacities. So we'll get to talk to them a little bit. They have a lot of burning questions for the residency process for Dr. Bhadriraju. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So welcome, Dr. Bhadriraju. Thank you so much for making the time. I would really like to jump in and say, if you could give us an introduction and give us a little bit about your background so our viewers get to know exactly who you are.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is, as you mentioned, Padmini Bhudriraju. I'm a board-certified internist, and I live in McAllen, Rio Grande Valley, the most beautiful place. And I actually am from India, South India, in Andhra Pradesh, where I trained. I did my medical school there. I come from a family of doctors. Father, brothers are all physicians, and moved to US in 2001. Did my residency and was in Michigan before I moved to the Valley. Finished my residency there, did my waiver job, and then moved to a warm place and moved here to Texas. So love it here. No snow to deal with. So really love it. Yeah.
So Dr. Bhadriraju, you currently have a private practice as well as you are employed by a hospital system. Is that right?
I am a regional CMO for Prime Group of Hospitals here.
Okay.
And I do have my own practice too.
Okay. And when you say regional CMO, how many hospitals are you overseeing?
Right now with Prime Hospitals in this area, we have three.
Okay.
There's one in Mission, Weslaco, and Harlingen. So.
Okay. And as with your role as a CMO, do you have any direct or indirect purview of any residency programs, either directly or indirectly?
I could say, because most of the hospitals, and in fact, I do round in other hospitals too in McAllen, and almost many of our hospitals here have residency programs.
Okay.
So MAP has residency program, but that's not actually, it is the UTRGV, which
yes,
is,
of course,
collaborates and have with the hospital. NAP has it, and in McAllen, we have McAllen Medical, which has, and there is a lot of other residency programs in pipeline in various hospitals here.
Okay. So you definitely have an association with multiple residency programs by the sound of it, in one way or the other.
Indirectly.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, and obviously throughout your career, you have dealt with students going through residency programs. You've, at some point or the other, have been a part of directly selecting residents, whether while you were a resident yourself or later on. Could you give us some insight into what has stood out in your experience of interviewing not just residents? I know you've actually interviewed a lot of attending physicians as well. So in your experience, what has stood out the most from an interviewee, whether it's a resident, whether it's an attending, what have you?
Typically, anywhere, I think the most important thing is, everyone has worked really hard to be where. I mean, you went to the medical school, so everyone will have that kind of, they must have put in a lot of effort and they're already there, right? But the most important thing which I see is there is, the attitude is really, really very important of how you see some people and it's almost like they're forced to be there. I think that plays a very important role, and the communication skills, empathy, that it shows whether you are you know it or not. It's very easy to perceive that. And I think when you have everybody who has worked so hard and medical knowledge, everyone must be having about the same, right? I mean, you go through all these years of tough training and stuff like that. So there are things of you see there are, because I have medical students who round with me too. So they definitely, when I look at some of the students, it's like they just want to come and finish the time and leave. But there are some people who are so enthusiastic, and that they love and that they're in this field because of that. So I think that's something which is very important, which I will see. And I think that will make a big difference of how the students do ask me, and when they come to round with me, that's something which I focus on. I say, yeah, you'll have enough time to read. It's important for your grades and all that, but the bedside manner, how you are, respecting others and all these things which are silently, noticeable, that'll make you, that'll put you apart from, somebody else. And I think that's and you also can, you have to trust yourself, have confidence in yourself. And that shows, I think those are the things which will really, keep you apart from, somebody else.
Yeah. So it seems
because
like...
I'm looking at, I'm looking at a physician, because this is a future physician who's going to take care of patients' lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want the whole picture,
mm-hmm.
rather than, I just don't want somebody with a bookish knowledge or just super good in one aspect. You need to be able to empathize, because I really feel that being a physician is an amazing blessing, or it's a privilege, right?
Agree.
You're growing with your patient. I've been blessed to have very great role models. My dad was the best physician, I think.
Fantastic.
Well, I was very little when I decided to become a physician, probably 4 years old. And so it really is so amazing that, and then treating disease is not, health is not just treating disease, right? And you want the whole picture. So I want somebody whom I see, I need to be able to, and it's some of the medical students, when they come to round with me, I mean, I'll say, wow, this is that person. He or she is going to go
mm-hmm.
places. So I think that will be, program directors will really watch all that.
So it seems like some of the things that Dr. B is talking about that are very important are passion is key, being able to showcase passion and be confident in yourself, in your answers. And also don't be there just because this is part of the process, but be at that position because you want to be, right? Show interest, show that this is something you want to do, because, these rotations, these residency interviews, they are showing individuals for the long run. This isn't a quick 4 weeks, we see the individual and that's it. They're trying to build and look for individuals that they can have around for 3, 4, many years. So seems like those are the most important things. Yeah. Individuals who want to be there, are passionate about medicine, and confident about their work ethic. So
now what I was saying is, this is true because this is going to be your life. When you make a decision of becoming a physician, when you joined the medical school, you made that decision. Right? I mean, that's what you got to plan. You knew that you will have a very busy life and you will have a family, you'll have all that. So you need to be prepared. And so this is going to be a life.
Exactly. Absolutely correct. I believe this is a life choice. This is a decision you make way early on. It should not be a surprise when you get to your rotations. It should not be a surprise when you get to your residency. The hours that you're putting in is because you want to be there. So great advice.
I remember in my surgery rotation, from what you were saying about actually being empathetic and connecting to patients, because really you're responsible for a lot of them. Their cases, it really shook me, because this was my third year core rotation, so one of the first few. And the patient was, the doctor suggested he may need a surgery. So the patient, we asked him, what is your decision? And he said, you're the doctors. You know best. Go ahead and do what you need to do. And my colleague and I were standing there stunned, because we were like, that's the level of trust and responsibility a physician has. And you have to be a really, well-intending person. So I can very much understand why PDs look for those characteristics particularly.
So, Dr. Hanan and Dr. Nizamani and I were talking just before you joined the call as to during these interviews, primarily for residency, it seems like from what I have seen from former students, that the PDs are not necessarily focusing on the knowledge base or the technical knowledge of the student, but it seems like they're focusing more on, can I tolerate this person for 3 to 7 years for 80, 90 hours a week? Is that accurate to characterize these interviews like that? These are mostly behavioral interviews and not technical interviews at the residency level?
I'm not directly involved in an interview process, but it makes sense. I mean, it's not, you're looking at the whole person. You're not looking at the just the bookish knowledge, and you're looking at the person, like you do a 36-hour call, and then how are you going to be after that? Are you going to throw things and, not able to take it, or, you're still, how your mental state would be, because it's tough. You do 36-hour calls. I mean, ours are a little better now than what we did before, and then you still have to continue with it. And, so I think it's the whole person, rather than just how much knowledge you have in medicine, because you're continuing to learn. Medicine is something which you're not learning forever till I think we die, right? Yeah. It's a non-stop learning process, no? So that process is there. That knowledge base, we expect that is already there. And so it's not just the knowledge base, but the whole personality and everything.
How important would you say are personal statements during the interview process? If I say in my personal statement that I just drive Ubers all day, and I somehow managed to get an interview with the program director, and I know that my personal statement really wasn't the best, do I double down and stick to what I wrote on the personal statement? Or should I, switch gears and be like, yes, Uber driving is also one of the things I do on my side, but I'm also, Batman at night. I don't know. I mean...
See, remember, the personal statement is an opportunity for you to present. That's the first piece, where there is, the program director is looking at it, and then, it is giving you an opportunity to present, and you need to make sure that you put in all the information, right? But as you said, like you had an opportunity to actually be present, but you think that there's something else to be added to your personal statement. You always talk about it. Say that, hey, you know what, this is what, and I had to make this. I have to, for whatever reasons, I did not have enough time or anything. But I'm not just this personal statement, but there is a lot more. You have an opportunity to present that. You need to make sure you make most of that interview.
That's great advice, and that actually makes a lot of sense as to if you're going to put this information, yes, talk about it, and talk about the value, just like Dr. B is talking about. These are things you're going to be talking about. This is a snapshot of you for the chance that the program director gets to understand and know who you are. If I were to take a picture of you, which picture would you want to show me? Is that the picture that showcases the most value? If so, then that's what you want to present. So if you want to talk about, like, you know, maybe an Uber or whatever you do, what does that evaluate into your life, right? Is that because you have financial struggles and you're working around the clock to be able to support yourself? If that's the case, then that definitely can present a valuable asset. You are a well-rounded individual who is capable of, even in, you know, the greatest adversities, find a solution. So talk it to your strengths.
Right. Or maybe even what skills you learned from Uber driving, right? Like, it's possible that you learn how to deal with a lot of angry people in the car.
No, that's a good point.
Traffic in Chicago.
Right. And translates into how you deal with patients when they're angry, how you calm them down, right? You're in a situation, you're in a closed space, which you will be with your patients multiple times. And so how do you deal with patients when they're not in their best state? So, you know, you can take anything from Uber driving too, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's true. And probably you are really working hard to make ends meet, or you're really well-rounded. You're, you know, supporting yourself or supporting others, whatever. So that's great. You know, tell that story.
Yeah,
what is
exactly.
there. Yeah.
So another question that I've always had is, what can, you know, especially now, this is August, we're approaching September. We don't really have a whole lot of time until interviews go out. Right. Interviews start going out sometime in October. And then I think they kind of come to a hard close in January, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So there isn't a whole lot of time. So Dr. Bhadriraju, for you to give, say, advice to Saad, and I know you've spoken to Saad at length before this, but to Saad and Kiran, what advice would you give them from now through, say, October, November? Because, you know, let's face it, in December, everything comes to a standstill in the sense that administratively nothing's moving on. But for them to maximize their opportunities to get an interview, assuming that their scores are okay and everything's, you know, lining up, what advice would you give them to maximize their opportunities from now through, you know, end of October, early or even mid-November? What can they potentially do in your mind to improve their chances and get their visibility out there?
You all have research background. You all have, and apply to as many programs as possible, not just, one or two. There's some people say only, try to apply for a lot of programs. And then by now, when you're applying your application, between here to now, I'm not sure what you can add, but everything you do, make sure your story is well told in your personal statement. And I think be extremely positive. I think you create your reality. I totally believe the law of attraction. So make sure that you can create it.
That's so true. What you put out there is what you get back.
Yeah.
It's very
you
true.
get back. That's very true. I totally believe that.
Yeah.
You
I think it into existence. I like that idea where think positively and you breathe it into existence. Yeah.
Especially since our field requires it too.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's going to be so many, I think, hardships if we have not already faced them in certain aspects, like going through undergrad, medical school, the whole, residency aspect of it with, certain financial implications of that. Life can be hard, but if you can smile through it, or if you can, just put your best foot forward through it, I think it can go a long way. And it translates to your patients too. Like when your patients see you and they're having a bad day, and then you're just the one smiling, and you relate to them, and you tell them, yeah, I've had a bad day too, but hey, we make the best of it. Their attitudes change, right?
Definitely.
They're people.
And that's a very important thing, which as a practicing physician, I can tell you, it's very true. Because when you decided to become a physician, all you're going to see is pain and sickness. They're not going to come here to just have coffee with you. They are sick. That's why they're coming here to the hospital or whatever. But I think that attitude makes huge difference. And I have seen this and I see it day in and day out. Just being positive, I believe in connecting with higher source and whatever, because people call with different names. But before I actually touch or go into the patient's room, I'm connecting and praying that let me be a wonderful instrument in your hands, and go there, and then you bring that. It changes. It is. And as a physician, I think you're a healer. The role we play is a very important role, and what you said is very true.
My mom is also a physician from Pakistan. And she would always tell me, and I'm pretty sure Saad has also had a lot of impact in his life to lead him to this point too.
Of course.
And his own experiences. And I remember my mom would always say that, Kiran, same with us, we're having that connection, because that's, my source of strength. Be like, pray for you to have that healing in your hands, wherever you go, you bring in healing, even if you cannot do something, at least you don't harm.
That's right. That's the first rule, right? Do no harm is the first rule. And seriously, I think that, positive attitude, because my role models are, Louise Hay. I don't know if you read Louise Hay, or, Law of Attraction, and Oprah too. Oprah does a lot of positive stuff, and it is really true. You create things around you, so it's so important to be positive. Be sure that you will, you'll make it, and you will create your reality.
So would you advise Dr. Bhadriraju for Dr. Nizamani and Dr. Hanan to potentially, spend some time and maybe do audition rotations or shadowing with doctors at this juncture? Or do you think it might be a little too late at this point to do that, and they should probably focus on, say, interview skills or things that'll help them in the next phase of their application? Or do you think that active networking at this point is still a good idea, and maybe even into the rest of the year and even early January? What are your thoughts on that aspect?
I think networking is always good. I mean, if there is an opportunity, go to the programs and, be visible. If there is a possibility like that, it's always a good idea, I think, personally.
Okay.
If there is
but how long into, because we've had some students in the past who've come and said, I wish I hadn't done that. I was a waste of time. I wish I could have focused more on doing X, Y, and Z. I mean, is that essentially just bad time management, or or do you think providing a little more knowledge to that particular student would have potentially altered things for him? I mean, I'm completely from a third party, so I don't really, I'm just trying to guess. What is there a specific time? And okay, after November, put your hands up, pens down, you're all done, your application is over, just focus on the next phase, whatever that might be. That might be improving your presence, improving your, working on your interview skills and things like that. What are your thoughts on that, Dr. Bhadriraju?
I think if you manage your time well, you should be able to do both. Right? I mean, till you get into your residency, you are still working towards that goal. So you will do everything to, strengthen you, get into the thing. And improving yourself, or focusing on improving your, skills for the interview, or getting more well-rounded. I think if you manage your time well, you should be able to do both. And because you will be doing a lot when you get into residency.
And that's very true. There will be a lot of things you have to do and a lot of hours. So a lot of, if this is I think Dr. Bhadriraju, you're correct about the fact that take advantage of this time to not only better our applications, but better ourselves. Figure
That's
out what were some things that were the pitfalls, right? Can you correct these pitfalls? Because if you correct them now, not only are you correcting them for your match, but also as a physician down the road, right? You are trying to change those things that got you where you are and improve yourself. So definitely this is a time of self-criticism, self-improvement, and most definitely, even in the toughest times, have a positive outlook, just like Dr. B has suggested. This is a little bit of a fun question, and one of the reasons why I always ask individuals who are very successful in their fields is because they often have a lot of wisdom and guidance to provide individuals who are just getting into their fields, which is, what is one book that you think is a great read for anybody, medical or outside of medicine? And even the book, it doesn't have to be medical related. It could be outside of medicine. What is one book you believe every human should be reading on this earth?
I love reading, so I cannot tell you about one book. And medical, we all are reading all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not. But I try to focus and read a lot of new age or positivity books. There's one wonderful book which I read is Many Lives, Many Masters. I think that's a wonderful book that everybody should read. Conversations with God. What is the latest one I try to do? And one thing which I focus, everything I read and I see, I try to only focus on positive stuff. I don't watch TV. I don't watch news, but that doesn't mean I put my head in the sand and cover it. But I try to, because in the hospital everywhere we are seeing so many sick people and taking care of all that. I try to keep everything positive.
Great.
So a lot of new age and law of attraction kind of books. But Many Lives, Many Masters, it makes you think.
Yeah. Well, that's great suggestion, and I'm sure our viewers will be very happy about it. That's a definite next book that I'm getting off of Amazon on audiobook. Hopefully they have an audiobook as well. But for sure, thank you very much for that suggestion, Dr. Bhadriraju.
Dr. Hanan, you don't have to buy it from Amazon. You can get a library membership much cheaper. People keep forgetting about libraries, man.
You are very correct. And actually, many libraries here in Chicago have also have a lot of programs, and they have more than just, they actually have audiobooks.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. So you're right. Maybe a skew away from the big corp Amazons and go support the friendly neighborhood library.
Right. But sorry, what was that, Dr. Bhadriraju?
No, I was telling you should support libraries. Yeah.
Yes.
I agree. We actually have within our office, within a mile radius, we have the main library of 2 different townships.
Wow.
So Des Plaines as well as Park Ridge. You should definitely go check them out. They're huge. Des Plaines is actually a nationally ranked library too.
Wow.
So you guys should check that out. They have Pardon?
Yeah, libraries are my favorite place to go to.
Yeah, I didn't even know that the libraries nowadays have a huge DVD collection. Like, do you remember old school Blockbuster?
They literally do.
They do. So you can get new movies, old movies.
Yes. You can get those black and white movies on tapes. Yes, they do.
Great documentaries. The best thing I notice about the new libraries is how much integrative they are with the current all internet/world, meaning that they give you audiobooks, and if you have a Kindle, they'll give you the whole library on your device. So I think that's amazing. So apart from having physical books, which I love having a physical copy, it is also fantastic to know that there are services to have it on your Kindle, listen to it, audiobooks.
So, Dr. Bhadriraju, switching gears a little bit, I did have a couple more questions for you. Well, this is a question that I get a lot from a lot of our students. We do have a match rate of about over 75%, which kind of means that approximately 3 out of 4 students match. 1 student out of 4 does not match. And the question I get a lot is, that's it, my chances are over. etc., 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 and it kind of triggers almost a downward spiral, if you will. But from my experience, what I've seen is that I've seen several students be very, very successful, if not, in fact, their second application is a lot better than their first application because they have the additional experience, etc. As a person who actually selects people either directly or indirectly into residency programs, do you think a student who's applying more than once to your programs, is that looked upon favorably? Is that looked upon neutrally? Does it have zero bearing whatsoever? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's not a negative thing. As you know, everywhere it's not 100%. Everybody doesn't get matched, so they have to apply again. And I know the programs know that, so they're not going to look down upon or anything like that. But as long the way you said, if you make your application stronger, what did you do in that 1 year? What happened? What made you better that I have to take you? Because why should I should have a reason to choose you versus somebody else. So you made most of your time, or how did that? That's what matters. Mm-hmm. That's what matters, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome.
So it's not like, you don't give up. You make yourself better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that speaks volume, and Dr. Bhadriraju is right about the fact that one of the things about that year is like we talked about earlier, it's a self-critiquing, self-improvement year. Find out ways that applications, may have had a little bit of pitfalls, may have had some areas that were that needed some improvement, and take this time to improve on those things.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling.
Learn another language. Learn another language.
Yeah.
Yes, learn another language.
And that's what I keep telling the students, that, one thing I feel students tend to forget about is that the residency is a job interview at the end of it. The only difference between a regular job interview versus a residency is that you can only do this once a year. A job interview, you don't get into the company that you want. You wait for another opening to pop up, and then you just apply. That could happen next week. That could happen next month. That could happen in 2 years. You don't know. The residency program is a job application once a year. Right. And that's what I keep telling people, that if you don't get into a job the first time, what do normal people, if you were a teenager and you wanted to work at an ice cream place because they had great ice cream, right. Everyone's been there, and you don't get it the first time round. You keep doing, and you keep showing up. You keep trying to establish that you are that reliable person that needs to be hired. And and in my opinion, I don't think, and I think that's what Dr. Bhadriraju kind of highlighted too. Mm-hmm. You just have to improve. If you're sitting there wallowing in self-pity, that's not going to improve chances at all. If you're going about telling people that, blaming everyone in the world except for yourself for whatever shortcomings you may or may not have had, that's also not going to help. That doesn't portray you in a good light. But being able to take ownership that, hey, you know what? I had shortcomings. I had issues with my personal statement. I had issues with, I'm going to take this time to, do some audition rotations, as Dr. Bhadriraju pointed out. Go and learn some administrative work from hospitals and things like that. That shows initiative. But if you're just sitting there and be like, oh, the world is against me, God is... And I've actually had students who come and said stuff like this, that there's nothing I could have possibly done that would have been better. Right. It's just luck of the draw, and I am usually really bad at these things. And I'm like, well, that's not... You got to do something about it.
And I think...
But I think that's important. That aspect is very important in every aspect of your life. It's not just this. I mean, you just didn't get an interview and then you wallow in self-pity and then that's the end of it. No. You know what Kaushik said is very true. You got to improve yourself and go back inside and see why. It's like, and it's true, Kaushik, there are some people, everything is somebody else's fault. But they don't go very far.
Yeah. And I think what everyone's saying, it's echoing, because I think it's also like your ability to bounce back. from something, like, what everyone's mentioning, like, you don't just sit there and not do it, but how can you bounce back? And I think especially in residency, you'll need to bounce back. Especially in residency, you'll have a patient loss, you'll have a patient who's not doing so well, maybe you made a mistake, because you're a human being, and that's going to happen at some point. You reduce that possibility, but it's possible. So how can you bounce back out of that? So if residency didn't happen the first time around and you just stopped there, your 10 to 8 years of hard work, you're like, this is it, I should have gotten it the first time. But really, it's as Dr. Bhadriraju mentioned, it's a privilege to be a physician. So when is the time that you give up, and when is the time that you keep trying? And I think in medicine, like, you have to keep trying until the last moment, even after you become an attending, even after you're a program director, you're still a person who is responsible for other people. If you give up on yourself, how easily will you give up on others and their healthcare?
Oh, wow. That's a
very
that's
powerful.
a very important piece you mentioned. If you give up on yourself.
Right?
So
like, because patients take from you, they take from your energy, they take from your existence. And patients, they're chronically usually sick people, right? Especially when you're talking about internal medicine. The patient comes to you, type 1, type 2, diabetes, chronic illnesses, complications because of that, COPD. They're having difficulty breathing. And then you're sitting there, and if you don't have this in you to bounce back up, your patient who's looking at you for direction, what are you telling them about them? Right? Can you bounce back up from your illness? And I think some of my favorite preceptors have been those physicians who, when they are in front of a patient, they just change their mood completely. Because I've seen those physicians also, there's moments where mistakes been made, but they're like, to the patient, I'm so sorry, I'll do better.
Wow.
Or I'll be there
really
for you.
Deep. That's deep.
Yeah, deep.
Yeah.
But that's great. That's a great point. Very true.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Bhadriraju, I have one final question, and that is, you have a very successful career. You are an IMG. You are not natively from the United States. So you went through this entire daunting visa process, and you have a very, a career that is that a lot of our students can look at and try to emulate. In your life, in your career, everything that you've gone through and everything that you've experienced, the trials and tribulations, would you have done anything differently? And if you would, what would that be?
I really love my life. I don't think I would change anything. And I feel that I feel very grateful for every step, because that's what made me come where I am, right? So I don't think I really would want to change anything, because I'm extremely grateful. It is hard work. You work like 14 to 16 hours. I have kids, I have family. But I knew that when I got into medicine, or when I went to med school, I knew this is what the life I want. I want children too. So it's not like just the career. So I kind of had to manage everything. I have 2 beautiful kids who are my best friends. And,
that's wonderful.
That's
amazing. So beautiful.
And one important thing is, I think we work really hard, and you'll go back home. You have to make sure you have a happy home. That's very important for you to be successful, because you got to make sure that is the place where it will be a heaven. You will go back and make sure of that. And I think it will really bring a lot of success. Everything else fall into place. Definitely will fall into place.
That's very, very telling, Dr. Bhadriraju. That almost kind of going back to what Dr. Nizamani was saying, that you have to keep working on yourself. Even after you're successful in your career, you still have to work on that personal life aspect, because that's not easy either. Like, that takes real work too.
Yes.
But I mean, again, Dr. Bhadriraju, thank you so much for your time. I don't have any more questions. If Dr. Nizamani or Dr. Hanan have any more questions, the floor is theirs. But, as always, we've had several students rotate with you. They love you. You have given them, you're such a fantastic role model for them. And that's why, for me personally, I really wanted Dr. Nizamani and Dr. Hanan to meet you, because you have kind of gone through very similar circumstances that all of our Canadian students go through. Because as a foreigner, you have to work twice as hard as the American citizen to get the same level of recognition, at least initially, to get your foot through the door. And what, to me, the biggest takeaway is your message of positivity, which I think nowadays tends to get lost in the mix, which a lot of people don't really talk about. Is, typically the conversation always goes to, mental health. But this is not really a mental health issue. What you advocate is really a perspective issue, looking at the glass half full. And, just talking to you, for me personally, from my professional as well as personal life, that has brought about a change in perspective. Wow. Just being happier and more positive about what you have, as opposed to focusing on what you don't have, because there's always things we don't have. And I think that's the huge takeaway from our conversations that I've had with you. So, and I definitely wanted Dr. Nizamani and Dr. Hanan to experience that. And I'm very confident that our students who interact with you, and I've actually told a lot of students to reach out to you if they are in the Texas region, to just talk about that, because that reorientation of perspective plays such a significant role in just rewiring, rejiggering, taking care of yourself a little bit more, and potentially not even giving up on yourself. When you think you're at the end of the line, just looking at the things that, hey, what have I achieved till now, as opposed to what are the things I didn't achieve. Just, it's like a kickstart almost. And we really appreciate that aspect that you're bringing, Dr. Bhadriraju. We really appreciate that. You give that to our students. You give that to whoever you talk to. It's truly uplifting.
It is.
I really appreciate this opportunity to be here. And you're very right. Two things which we should, the positivity and gratitude. That's it. I think it's true.
Okay, there you go. Gratitude.
That's a great place.
If anything, the viewers can take away from this interview is those final words that Dr. Bhadriraju just said. Gratitude and a positive outlook to life. If you take that and you take it to anywhere, residency, medical school, starting medical school, going into a different profession or a different career, you'd have those two things and you'll have a fulfilled life. That is the pursuit of happiness. Right.
I love this. We have taglines throughout this. There's one from Dr. Bhadriraju, one from Dr. Hanan, one from Kaushik. I love it.
So good luck to you all. I'm pretty sure you'll do very well.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Bhadriraju. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for tuning into our podcast. Thank you so much, Dr. Bhadriraju, for giving us those nuggets of information. A lot of our students will find it helpful. And remember, Dr. Bhadriraju is our Clerkship Director. So as and when, and if you go to Texas, do make it a point to go and say hi to her. So far, she's helped almost every student who has reached out to her. So thank you again, Dr. Bhadriraju, for your time. And remember, if you really enjoyed this podcast, give us a like. If you want to listen to our other episodes, look us up on Spotify, Google and Apple Podcasts, as well as our SJSM YouTube channel. Thank you so much. And remember, there is no shortcut to becoming an MD.
Thank you so much for tuning into our show. We hope you enjoyed another episode of Med School Minutes. If you like our content, please follow us and receive notification when a new show is posted. This podcast is brought to you by St. James School of Medicine. For a video version of this podcast, please check us out on sjsm.org/video.